Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beware the Artist. I am very excited to have Ken Tisa on the show today, the infamous Ken Tisa. Ken, hello, how are you?
Hello, nice to see you, Jeremy.
So if you want to start off by just kind of talking about who you are and what do you do?
Well, my name is Ken Tisa, as you know. I call myself a painter, though I've had a practice that has used ceramics, fibers, photography, collage, drawing, um, but all done through a painter's eye. Since the pandemic started, I kind of was trying to figure out. I remember March the 13th was my last day teaching at MICA, and I came back on the train that night, and there was not going to be school, and so I said, "Oh, this thing's probably going to last for a few months. What am I going to do to keep myself occupied, other than paint? I want to do something that responds to the situation." So I decided I would do a journal, pandemic journal. I had these two books that I bought in Italy years ago, and they were both handmade books, handmade paper, super expensive. And I've had them now for 5 years. And I open them up and caress the pages, touch them, put them back on the shelf. They're too pretty. And then I decided now's the time. So I decided to take the first book, which was a leather bound Florentine book, and document every day that I was in quarantine. And that turned into a real practice because it not only freed me from any restriction, but it gave me the ideas became incredible that I was exploring because I had no preconceived notions about what I would do or how I would do it. I just anything that came the project was anything that came into my head I would paint or draw. That's what I did. And one book led to another book. And then there are three books altogether. And the ideas in the books became really exciting for me, and because I I'm used to a certain way of seeing, but this allowed me to see in different ways that I usually put a damper on because I don't want to deviate from, a series or, something, an idea that I'm developing. I don't allow any other ideas to come into it. Here, I let any idea happen. And it opened up a world, like a major world for me. I worked from April to July on the two books. No, I'm sorry, on one book. And then from July to August, I worked on the second book. And that was a daily drawing or painting. That was the deal I made with myself. I had to do something every single day. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a document. It would be a sketchbook. And I didn't want to do a sketchbook. I wanted to do a project that really documented every single day. I've done this before. I did it in the 90s when AIDS was prevalent and I was losing so many friends. I did a tiny little paintings. They were like 8 inches by 12 inches. I did a painting every single day. I ended up with, I think, 500 or 600 paintings. It was an installation of paintings and memorabilia from people. This project I gave myself an 11 by 14 scale, which was bigger than 8 by 12, but not too big that I couldn't finish a painting every day. And after the second book, I decided I needed to work off paper and try something else. So I decided to do a painting a day on a panel, 11 by 14 panels. They're gessoed panels, and I use gouache and watercolor and ink pens. And again, no rules. We were talking earlier about anarchy. This is an anarchistic project because I do absolutely anything I want. I don't make a judgment about it. I just do it. Some of them obviously I like, and some of them I don't. But it doesn't matter if I like them or don't like them. They go up. This installation will eventually be floor to ceiling, and it's going to be huge because this pandemic is still going on. It's going to be a project till the end of the pandemic.
Do you see any connections and themes between the imagery that's created from the project you did in the 90s to kind of this stream of consciousness that's happening today?
Well, the project I did in the 90s was mostly figurative. It was all about the body and the external body, the decay of the external body, and pop culture, and what was going on at that time. I'm finding that this is more about internal. I do some figures. If they come out, I do them, but it's really more about the body, the internal workings of the body, the brain. Sometimes I think of them as dream maps, because I'll wake up. The first thing I do in the morning when I wake up is paint. Very first thing. I've always done that though. So this is just an extension of my practice anyway. But with this, it's not just drawing. I use paint. So I call them drawings. They're paintings basically. Or even the ones on paper are paintings. And I've been posting them. My project has been on Instagram. I post everything on Instagram. So it's an ongoing project that people are following. And I realize that people are part of the project. It's not just about me working on these things, putting them away and existing in my studio with me. The reaction, the comments, and the likes and dislikes of people seeing them become part of the project. So this has become bigger than me in terms of how people respond to it. It's been very exciting. I mean, I do get negative comments, of course. It's the internet. It's inevitable. I get some really, I get some nasty comments from people. But you know what? That's part of it. You know, I expect it. It's been keeping me sane. Seriously, I mean, I don't think I've ever been alone this long in my life. I live alone. I have one person in my pod, whatever that is. I have one person that I occasionally see. And even that is weird because social distancing and masks. Right. So basically, this is about being alone. And when you're alone this long, I'm always alone because I'm an artist. I have my practices being in my studio with my work, but it was my choice. This isn't my choice. I hate not having a choice. I hate being told what to do. And basically, I'm being told what to do. We all are. And we have to follow it because it's about not just our own health, but it's about the health of our loved ones. So we have to be careful. So I'm following the rules, which is something I'm not used to doing. I hate following rules. I never liked following rules. So this whole thing has been a new process for me. It's an old idea that I've used before, but a completely new concept surrounding it.
Yeah, I mean, the idea previously, everyone was kind of, they were disappearing one by one around you. And now it's almost as if we're disappearing from society, having to turn inwards on so much of our life. And there's so much self-reflection that's happening with this point in time, having to be so isolated that I can really see this stream of consciousness happening through these daily pieces, which it's exciting to me.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's exciting to me, and it's kind of, I feel guilt-ridden sometimes about being excited in a time that's so scary. Yeah. And I mean, not only do we have the pandemic, but we have Trump, a lunatic. And I'm going to just do a tiny little brief scream out.
Go for it.
He has caused me more anxiety than this pandemic has, because I'm looking at our democracy, I'm looking at our society, our culture fall apart around us while we have a leader that's encouraging people to hate each other. It's everything I always, everything I never dreamed I would see in this country. As fucked up as this country can be, I never thought I would see what I'm seeing. So that also has a lot to do with it. There's a
Hmm.
lot of anxiety in these paintings, a lot. And that anxiety comes through, I hope, because art, you and I were talking earlier about art being about truth,
Hmm.
and every artist has to tell their own truth. And so I want to make sure that my work is as honest as it possibly can be. And by not censoring it, I'm allowing it to be that honest. Even if there's a painting I don't like, I will hang that up, because there's a lot I don't like in the world
Hmm.
right now.
There's
So
also a level of vulnerability to that as well.
yeah, absolutely. And uh, I look around at the art world in New York, and what I'm seeing is a disaster happening. But I'm also seeing a lot of young artists that are developing new ways of communicating and new ways of showing work. I mean, uh, probably for me, it's not right because I'm not technologically skilled. I'm a Luddite. And, but a lot of young artists are using the internet in ways I can't or I don't want to.
Mm.
Um, and artists are very inventive people. Being an artist is being an inventor. Every time you make a work of art, you're inventing something that no one's seen before. So this will lead to a new way of seeing art, a new way of looking at art, and a new way of experiencing the art world. Regretfully for me, I'm too old to really have that experience. I'm going to watch it. I don't know if I'll be able to participate in it, though I am using Instagram, and that's new for me. So, I can't say I'm a total Luddite. I know how to push a button.
So all that being said, how do you see the role of the artist kind of changing with this use of technology? Are they still touching on the same themes, um, the same kind of aspect of what the art functioned as, or is it becoming something else?
Well, art has always evolved with society and always changed with society. I like to look back at history a lot, and I was telling you earlier I did a talk on art and chaos and war and plague, and in doing my research for that talk, um, I discovered all these amazing works of art that were frightening, like images of hell. I
Mhm.
remember, looking at when I was in Florence, looking at those frescoes of heaven and hell, and thinking, wow, hell is really exciting. Heaven looks really boring, all those pretty people with long flowing hair, but hell has people getting devoured and eaten. And then, of course, led me to Bosch and Goya, on. And I'm thinking, artists have always dealt with societal decay and destruction, and they've always dealt with it in the way that their technology allowed them to.
Mhm.
So, whatever technology we'll have, young artists will use it, and it will technologically will change, but the basic thing of truth is going to be there. Artists have to tell the truth.
Mhm.
We see the invisible and we see the visible, but we see what lies beneath the visible. So, however, whatever mediums are artists are able to use, they'll use. And yes, it will change, it will evolve, but the bottom line is art is about truth, and that will always be.
What would you say would be something of a dream project for you? I know that's kind of putting you on the spot, but
A
one thing
dream.
you've one thing you've always wanted to maybe go for but never had the funds, or maybe it was just something too large to actually grasp.
Well, I think if I could ever show this work, it would be a
Mm.
dream project because there's going to be probably about 500 to 800 paintings by the time this thing is over. That's going to require a huge space,
Hmm.
I'm not counting my chickens, and I don't know if it'll ever be shown as one piece, but that's my fantasy.
Hmm.
I have to be honest with you. I've lived so long that, I've pretty much done everything I've wanted to do so far. I mean, I was talking to a friend the other day because, we're talking about death. So
Hmm.
we talk about in a time of plague, you know, will this kill me? Will this kill me?
Hmm.
And somebody was talking about, oh, they have too much they want to do. And I was saying, I've done pretty much everything I've wanted to do so far. And I have no regrets. So no, I think just showing this work would be a big deal.
Now, with that being said, and just the longevity of your career and everything that you've kind of worked through, everything that you've seen, what has been kind of the best piece of advice that you've received as an artist, and what is the piece of advice that you would want to pass on to an upcoming generation of creatives?
Oh, that's a good question. Uh, my feeling, and this is what I've always talked to my students about in the past, is that to be an artist is to be a timekeeper and to understand that your gift is your responsibility
Hmm.
is to keep time. So when history looks back at the time you lived in, they will look at your work and know what happened, know who you were. You'll never die. You're always going to be there, immortalized in that work of art. I mean, think about, we look at Michelangelo, we look at Bosch, Bruegel, any of the greats, Goya. You look at those artists and you look and you see the time they lived in, the horrors they went through, the
Hmm.
joys they went through. And we kind of get to know them. So they're never going to be dead. They're always alive. So my advice to artists is to understand your responsibility and to don't take it for granted. This is a special, special gift. And I know I'm being, making artists seem like they're better than other people. They are. Sorry. I mean, I like being around artists. I love being around other artists. We're all assholes. Everybody's an asshole. I mean,
Hmm.
or not. Doesn't matter. But this magic that we do is really exciting. I
Hmm.
mean, think about it. You go to a museum and you're looking at a 2,000-year-old pot and it's giving you chills. Come on.
Hmm.
Who could do that?
That
We do that.
yeah, that experience, when you were teaching me when we were in Florence together, you assigned the book Einstein's Dreams, and I remember reading the chapter on I think it's Then and Now, and it brought on so much anxiety in myself, because I thought, well, am I living in this moment, or am I creating for something that's unobtainable, and I'm not really thinking of it? And it really made me sit and think about making work for myself in this moment in time, um, and trying to alleviate the pressure of the setting of Florence, because you're surrounded by amazing artwork after amazing artwork,
Everywhere.
masterwork on every
Yeah.
corner.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and and it was a little overwhelming, but it's one of the biggest lessons that I ever took away in my kind of art school experience, was to create for the moment, and
Right.
understanding who I am at this point in time, and reflecting on that and bringing that truth forward in the work that I was making. Um, at that point in time, I wouldn't say I made any good work, but the lessons that came through and the experience of that has definitely influenced me up to this point.
Well, you've actually said that better than me. You just summed it up. Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. And Florence was a magical place. I mean, it blew my mind. I mean, I lived in France for 8 years in the south of France, but that was about nature and light. And Florence was really like you walk down these cobblestone streets that Da Vinci walked down, that
Mhm.
Michelangelo walked down. I mean, and you think Botticelli, like this tiny little city with, I was just reading a book, speaking of Florence, on the Medicis. which I highly recommend.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking about a dinner party that Cosimo had. I think it was Cosimo or Lorenzo. I think it was Cosimo. Um, Leonardo, Botticelli, um, Boccaccio. Was it Boccaccio? No, uh, uh, Brunelleschi, the Dome, and about four other geniuses. And I'm thinking, how on God's name was that dinner party? It must have, how could the greatest minds that ever lived in the West all sitting around dinner at one time in one place? It blew my mind to think about it. And I lived, when I was in Florence, I lived right behind the Medici Palace in an
Mm-hmm.
apartment. So I would always walk by it every day. And I remember thinking, oh my God, how how incredible we are to be here. That was
Yeah.
a really extraordinary time.
Honestly, one of the highlights of my life, just being able to live there and absorb everything. And I am a huge art historical fanatic, so being in that space and time and being able to study these things in person. We talked earlier about uh,
Yeah,
being able to see
it was
reproductions and then
magical.
actually experience it, and then even going to Rome and seeing Caravaggio chapels and things
Oh
like
my
that are
God.
just to see honestly the chapels articulated almost as an installation space. I mean, that's what they were. They were installations. They
They were
weren't just
installations.
paintings. And they were curating an experience. That's something that's not cultivated in our textbooks that we have for reference.
No, this is another thing that for me, this is for me, art is about experience. It's not about like secondary looking, like looking online, looking in a book. I prefer books to online, but even that.
Hmm.
Um, it's an experiential situation. Like what happens between you and a work of art, that negative space in between the artwork and you becomes activated and becomes electric when that piece talks to you. First time I had three experiences with artworks that I'm going to sound okay, really crazy right now. So, you know, I was in France. I was director of the French program for MICA in the south of France, and I used to take the students to Paris for a week. And I'd always take them to the Guimet Museum, which is the Museum of Asian Art in Paris. It's mind-boggling.
Hmm.
Um, the French were in Southeast Asia, like Cambodia and Vietnam and Laos, and they vacuumed up all the Khmer sculptures they could find, brought them back to Paris, and I was in the ground floor where all the giant Khmer monumental statues are, and I hear my name called, Ken. And I thought it was one of the students. And I turn around, look, nobody's around me. And then I continue on and I hear my name called again. And I'm not bullshitting here. I'm telling
Uh-huh.
you the
Yeah.
truth. And I turn around and there's this Khmer statue and I hear it talking to me. And I said, am I going nuts? I know I'm not on drugs. I know I'm sane. What's going on? The statue spoke to me. And I can't tell you what it said. I mean, it was words
Yeah.
though.
Yeah. Yeah.
It spoke. And I had, I never had that experience ever in my life where a work of art talked. And this was a gorgeous, gorgeous Khmer statue. It was elegant. It was sensuous. It was everything I love.
Hmm.
So it spoke to me. It was my friend. It became my friend. The other experience I had with a work of art was when I was 19. Well, I should have started when I was 5, my first experience. My 5-year-old experience was at the Philadelphia Museum. My mom took me. It's the first time I had been to the Philadelphia Museum, and I'm from Philly. And we were walking and through the main entranceway, and there's this huge staircase And on the top of the staircase at the time, it's not there anymore because I've been back since, was a Rubens, is it Rubens? I think it was Rubens, painting of Prometheus Bound. It was this muscle man lying on a rock with an eagle with kind of this vaginal opening on the side of Prometheus, pulling his entrails out. Well, that was it. That was my first event, my first art event. I stopped in my tracks. I would not leave that painting. And I think it was my first taste of eroticism. It was my, here was this naked man, fully muscled, with this sensuous sore with sort of penile protrusions being pulled out by an eagle. That was it. I was in love. And then the other experience I had when I was in college was my first trip to the Prado, the Garden of Earthly Delights. I was 19. I saw that painting. That painting changed my life. Changed my life. Literally, I was one way before I saw it, and I became someone else after I saw it. This is what art can do. Art can talk. It could make you eroticized, or it could change your life. So I had those three experiences. I was lucky. And so for me, art has to be an experiential thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Most artists agree. Unless you're doing work specifically for the online presentation, film, photography. I mean, you could do other things that you can look at online and get that experience from. But when it comes to painting and sculpture, I think those have to be experienced in person.
We were talking earlier about kind of my experience with Rothko, and seeing these color field painters through my art history books, and I'm saying to myself, oh, I get it, but I'm not really a fan of it. And then I saw a show at the Hirshhorn of his actual works in person, and to stand that 8 to 10 inches away, fully experience it, have these colors wash over you, and really feel the emotion that's provoked through the application of the paint, was something that I never expected to experience, not only from a painting, but from a color field painting. And that it blew my mind. And that was one of my seminal experiences of being changed before and after seeing a work of art, and really feeling what a flat two-dimensional space could do. I mean, they're not necessarily flat, but there's so much depth in these paintings, but it definitely changed my experience.
Well, they're flat. He changed a flat surface into a surface that had insane depth. I mean, again, we're talking about this gift that artists are given, this ability to change people's lives. I mean, how many people are given that kind of gift, that we can do something that somebody could actually cry over?
Yeah.
Come on. Can you imagine somebody crying over a work of your art?
Or to feel an image. To feel an image is something that's it's intangible. I felt the pulse of these paintings, and
Right. Well, a lot of the early medieval work and pre-Renaissance frescoes were done with a different mindset, because a lot of those paintings were done on the churches. They weren't seen as static images. Like, we look at a painting, it hangs on a wall, it's a static image, it can move within the frame, but most people see it as a picture. They didn't, in medieval times, they didn't see these paintings as pictures. They saw them as moving images. They didn't have film. They were illiterate. So the only time they got to see, any activity and color and beauty and smell and light was when they went to church and they saw those frescoes. It was like going to the movies.
Yes.
You saw this whole scenario happen up on the ceiling, and it was mesmerizing. So, why are there so many Bosches in Spain? Well, at the time, Spain, the Netherlands was part of Spain, but the Spanish upper class was so repressed. They were so repressed. Catholicism was so extreme there that the only outlet they had was art.
Mm.
So they patronized the wildest art you could find. You look at a Bosch painting and you go, what were they thinking? I mean, you think of these proper cardinals, and you look at Bosch with the farting flowers and,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, devils eating people's, genitalia, and you go, what were these cardinals thinking? What they were thinking was this was fun for them. They finally had an out. They could look at these paintings and go into these stories and get out of their repressed lives. So, that's another thing we could do, you know.
Yeah, and Bosch just it's like taking acid.
It is like taking acid.
It's so immersive, and the amount of intricacy is unbelievable.
Well,
Um,
there's a theory that he was part of a hash cult. That
really?
yeah, that after the Crusades, hash entered Europe, and of course they didn't have the prohibitions like all this stupid shit that we have about like not being able to smoke weed or take hash. So there was a theory that in the Netherlands, that area of Flanders,
Hmm.
that there was a hash cult that Bosch was part of, and it makes, when you look at his paintings, it makes complete
It's
sense.
so fitting in the
Yeah,
best
I
way
mean,
possible.
absolutely. Bruegel's another one. You look at those paintings; it's another
Yeah.
one. He had a good time. Bruegel is an art. He showed the dancers. He showed people, the peasants, having a jolly old time, and he also
Hmm.
showed hell.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys were clued in. They knew what was happening.
I like
And
to think to myself sometimes, kind of think about their facial reactions as they're in their studio, and they step back and they get that moment, they get that little smile, and then they go back in, they're like, okay, where can this go next? And they're just genuinely, you can feel their excitement through the work. They're having a good time as they're making. They're not necessarily just these religious reproductions.
No, I always wonder, I mean, there's not a lot written about Bosch, but I always wonder if he knew what a genius he was, if he
Mm,
knew how his, that one, especially the Garden of Earthly Delights, would change the history of art.
mm.
How, why is, I mean, when you look, have you seen that painting?
I
Have you
have
been
seen
to
the
the,
painting, yes.
it's huge. I mean, I only saw it in reproduction until I saw it in person. And,
Hmm.
it was, again, mind boggling. It's a gigantic painting on both sides,
Yeah.
Uh, so, it's, looking at art history. I mean, museums are necessary. I know people have issues with museums. I love museums.
Hmm.
A lot of people don't. I do. I love museums. I love the Met. Um, I I used to, before the pandemic. I used to go every week.
Hmm.
Um, I spend an hour, with one of my favorite pieces, and it changed every week. My favorite piece changed weekly. Um, I used to love the Greek rooms. You
Mm.
know, well, I like anything ancient. I like ancient art.
Hmm. I think
But
that comes through in the figures that you choose to depict in your work. They do, they have a very sculptural kind of
well, they
aspect.
come out of Greek sculpture.
Yeah.
Actually, thank you for noticing.
Also, that kind of brings me to a topic. There's so much of your work that is it's based off of collecting, and you have these amazing collections, and a lot of them come from your travels as well. Do you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Collecting is a major part of my life. It was. I don't collect anymore.
Hmm.
Um, I I've collected since I'm 5 years old. Since I started with rocks and seashells. I still have them actually from when I was a kid.
That's amazing.
I then I collected comic books and I collected dolls and I collected. I mean, now my well, now I don't collect, but I have this big collection of action figures that I like mixing up with classical ethnographic art and European porcelain.
Hmm.
So when I'm, when I'm in the mood, um, I usually I put things together, things that shouldn't belong together. That's like what I like to do in my painting. I like putting things that shouldn't go together. Um, I like being bad. You know, my bathroom is my action figure central. I have shelves in my bathroom. Whenever I feel like playing, I go in there and start moving all these action figures around, and I put them with African art, with Asian art, with European art. I just mix it all up. I did a show a few years ago that where I had an opportunity to do that. My fantasy was to do a show about my collection, and I was given that opportunity. It was so much fun.
Hmm.
It was so much fun because I saw the collection. I never see my collection as individual pieces. Their things are always part of other things. They never sit alone. I'm not tasteful. I like overdoing everything.
Hmm.
So my house is, a lot of collections, a lot of stuff. My art's a collection. I never do a single work of art. It's always done in conjunction with other works of
Mm.
art. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's an intrinsic part of my work is collecting, was collecting. Now, using that collection, I'm planning on mixing up objects with this work at some point. I'm not sure how yet, but usually probably put shelves in between the paintings with, a porcelain vase that maybe goes with a painting, or I don't know. I'm in the process of working that one out.
And another aspect of the span of this long career is that you've been teaching during this time. Um, how has teaching not only kind of changed over the span of your career as a art professor, but how has it influenced your kind of daily life
Yeah.
and your practice, if it has?
Well, that's a great question because I thought about that a lot. Like, I love teaching. Teaching became a passion for me. Um, I first My first experience of teaching was a nightmare. I taught at Yale for a year, and but I was not teaching artists. I was teaching undergrads like lawyers and doctors that were taking art as an elective, and it was like root canal. They didn't get me. They did not understand what I was talking about.
Hmm.
And I did everything. I did some setups in there that would make any art student cry and weep from joy, and they did not get it. Once I set up the whole room, I lived across the street from the Salvation Army, and they were having 50-cent day. You could fill a bag with anything you wanted for 50 cents. So they happened to have at that time racks of prom dresses, 1950s prom dresses. I bought about $20 worth of prom dresses, which filled the entire classroom. So I strung them up on clotheslines all over the room. So you
Hmm.
couldn't stand up without bumping into a satin prom dress. And I told everybody, sit on the floor and draw what you see. I was so excited
That's
by
amazing.
that. Well, yeah, they couldn't do it. They didn't know what I was doing. They kept saying, "Well, what am I supposed to draw?" I said, "Look up, draw that." And it was a fail. I was a
Mm.
failed teacher. So I said, I never want to teach again, ever.
Mhm.
I will not do this again. So it wasn't until Micah invited me in 1988 to come down to do a visiting artist gig, which I didn't want to do, but I figured, well, what the hell, it's one day.
Mhm.
Well, I walked into that classroom and I saw all these Micah students looking at me with hunger. And I said, oh, this is different.
Yeah.
This is a different ball game. And I threw my notes away. I had like a stack of notes, like, I was like writing ideas, and I
Mhm.
just threw it all away and started talking. And it was love at first sight. I fell in love with Micah and the students at Micah. And I thought, this is something I need to do. This is something that I've been given. And so I made sure I did it well, and I made sure they hired me back. And they did. And Micah, at that time, you wouldn't have recognized it. It was like, you know, 3 buildings. It was
It's in the
art.
tavern.
It was the tavern, not counting the tavern. It was 3 buildings. The tavern was 4, but it was run by artists. It was funky, and it was nowhere near the facilities that they have now. But it was a real art school. I mean,
Mhm.
it was really like hardcore art, and it was such a joy. And teaching has changed, along with the Garden of Earthly Delights, has changed my life. I love teaching, and I'm going to miss it. I do miss it. I miss having that in-person communication, and the having talking about ideas. And because artists are very smart people, even though they might not be as well read as other people or as astute in some things. You can't bullshit an art student.
Mhm.
They will recognize bullshit 5 miles away. So I realized, whatever I tell these kids, I better talk to myself. It has to be, not only am I talking to someone else, I'm talking to myself. So I always think of teaching as looking in a mirror.
Mm.
Whatever I say in that mirror has to bounce back to me. So I have to make sure I'm telling the truth. And I'm also preface everything with, this is my feeling. There
Mm.
can't be a universal in art and in teaching. You're talking about what you think, and what you think doesn't mean the world.
Yeah.
So, I think a good art school is where you have professors that understand that, and that understand they're talking from their own experience, but that experience is open. Like, I know that I could like something and someone else can hate it.
Mhm.
Who's right? Who's wrong? We're both right. Art gives an experience to the viewer. I happen to be a teacher, so my experience gets talked about, but it doesn't mean it's right for
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody.
I
So
also believe that professors and teachers in general, they learn just as much from the students as the
absolutely,
students are learning from them. It's a cyclical kind of exchange.
absolutely.
Yeah.
If you're teaching and those students aren't giving anything back to you, it's torture.
Mm.
It's torture.
Yeah.
You know what it's like. It's like when I got to Micah and I realized teaching artists, real artists, is a whole different experience than teaching art.
Mm. Yes. True.
Teaching, you can't teach somebody to be an artist. It's like anything else. You're born that way. You're born with art DNA, and it's up to the teacher to bring that DNA out.
Mm.
Sometimes an artist won't go on to be an artist, but they'll use that creativity for successful careers.
Yeah, they'll bring the idea of creative problem solving into every aspect
Right,
of their life. They're
exactly.
thinking out of the box and how to reapproach things from that opposite angle, but yet still create this goal. So.
Some of the smartest people in the world that I've known have been artists. Also,
Mm.
some of the dumbest, but mostly smartest. But mostly smartest. I mean, in terms of how do you solve a problem, talk to an artist. They'll always figure out a way.
Mm. All right, I think that is the perfect note to end on. Ken, thank you so much for
Oh,
being
this was
a
it was a
guest.
pleasure. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed talking. It's nice seeing you again.
Nice seeing you as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Again, thank you, and make sure you guys tune in next week for our next episode. All right, thanks. Bye.
Take care, Jeremy. Bye bye.